morning, on the 27th of January, and this is the last Sunday of the month before Chinese New Year. We are going to continue our study on feelings, Vedanā, which is the second of the 5 aggregates. Feeling is has a central importance in Buddhism. Whatever happens to us, we all have to do with feelings. The word Vedanā is very clear. Vedanā comes from the root word vid, V-I-D, vid, meaning to know. So feeling is a way of knowing. According to Buddhist psychology, when you know something, you must also feel. The two cannot be separated. To know is to feel. To feel is to know. At least in terms of Buddhist psychology. In modern psychology, of course, they try to compartmentalize everything. But what's interesting is, if you are interested in reading all these modern psychological studies related to Buddhism especially, neuropsychology, things like that, you find the way many of these articles, the way they explain how the mind works, how emotions work, and so on, helps you to understand early Buddhism better, especially when these people are informed Buddhism. Or sometimes, surprisingly, they might not be informed of Buddhism, but they know their stuff very well, they know their discipline very well. And when they write something in their highest level of inspiration, they actually talk about early Buddhism, the way the Buddha speaks about the mind. Take for example, a recent article I read, somebody was kind enough to send it to me. I forgot the exact title, but it's something like, being sad is not that bad. I don't know whether you've seen an article. It came out in the Australian newspaper called The Age. And that article is amazing. It has inspired me to write a response, a kind of reflection based on that. It's clear in my mind, like an egg, I'm holding it, carrying around with me, waiting for the time to write it. The idea is very useful to us. In fact, it helps me to understand some of the deeper teachings in Buddhism, especially the remark made by Sariputta. He was asked about Nirvana, and he says, is there any feeling in Nirvana? He says, no, there's no feeling in Nirvana. That is why Nirvana is it's the highest bliss. Nirvana is truly happy. And then someone asks, how can you be happy without any feeling? And Sariputta says, well, that's the whole thing. You don't have any feeling. That is truly happiness. Of course, this is no ordinary level of talk. Because one will say, what? No feeling? I'm going to be happy, right? Okay, to understand this, we have to take a step back to understand the difference between happiness and meaning, right? Or we can even go one step back and ask ourselves, what really is happiness? Is it that important that we must be happy? Is it truly the purpose of life to be happy? Happiness is definitely a kind of feeling. Okay? Sukha or Sukha Vedanā, as you say. A lot of people say my purpose in life is to be happy, which is fine, it's good to be happy. But the question now is, how many of us are really happy? And even more amazing than that, you know very well, when you are not happy, when we are not happy, we can still function. We are still functional people, we are still okay people. We might even be very, creative people. For example, if you are a parent, I don't know how many parents are really happy. I'm talking about roles, If you are parents, you have teenagers, I don't think you are happy, you're more like apprehensive, worried, concerned, And yet, you can't say you're happy, but somehow things move on, Because you see meaning in what you are doing, you see meaning in being a parent. Or maybe, doing Buddhist work is another thing, It's okay to say, I'm not happy with my work. But there's a difference here, When I say, I'd rather say it myself rather than anyone else, so no one can blame me for saying anything to anyone. let's say if I say I'm not happy with my work, then you have to understand what I mean. I'm not saying that I'm unhappy with the Dharma. I'm not saying I'm not happy with translating the suttas. What I'm saying is, if only more people study the sutta, if only more people know the suttas well, if only more people practice a happy kind of Buddhism. I receive letters from different parts of the world. One recently from Alaska, this woman, she wrote to me, she says, I'm so happy I found Sutta Discovery. I was looking around for all kinds of, I was looking around for Buddhism, I found all kinds of fluffy Buddhism, ritualistic Buddhism, and then I discovered Zen. I thought it was something great. And then again, you don't know what they're talking about. And then finally I found Theravada Buddhism. And then early Buddhism, which was so happy. He said, no, this is really what I'm looking for, and I feel so at peace. So, in a sense, she has found happiness, but she's living a very protected life away from the world, so to speak, in a very peaceful, wonderful place, and good for her. But we can't always live in a kind of protected life. So if you, whenever we engage ourselves with the world, what are you engaging with? You are engaging with the negativity of the world, incompleteness. And Buddhist work deals with just that. We don't deal with perfection. Because if you do perfection, you'll get enlightened. We deal with the world. And the world is not perfect. So of course, we won't be happy with an imperfect world. But we see meaning in our world. So happiness alone is not enough. Happiness is like the result of all this, if you like. Happiness is like having done everything, nothing more to do. Whereas meaning gives you understanding as well as purpose in life. So this article talks in a modern way about what happiness is now. And this is nothing new. You see, the whole idea of Buddhism is based on this basic philosophy. I've drawn a simple schematic diagram here. You can either be happy or you see meaning in life. These are two ways. You can be a good Buddhist. You can see meaning in life or you're happy. For example, let's say you're doing social work, you see people suffering, or just a war on and people keep getting hurt. You are in the field, you are the first aid person. You just go on helping all these people. You can't say, oh, I'm happy helping all these people who are shot down. You're rather weird, right? Something's wrong with you. But you say, look, people need help, and I'm here to help these people. You can use the word compassion. So in a sense, you can use another word for meaning here, compassion. Right? You're just out there to help people. They need help. Okay? Of course, on a higher level, if you understand what Sariputta is saying, he's saying, yes, you are happy doing that. You rather do this, helping people, than something else. So there is in a sense, a higher kind of, let's say joy, but a peace. The joy beyond joy. So here where we have difficulty with words, we feel good doing this. Maybe good is such a general word, so but you probably understand what I'm trying to say here. So you see all this in the Four Noble Truths. But first, we're talking about feeling. So you can look at feeling in two ways. Feeling as happiness, feeling as seeing meaning in what you do. Okay? Meaning is defined in meaning of life, or meaning of whatever you're doing, is defined as the first two noble truths by the Buddha, right? That there is this incomplete situation. There is this imperfection, dukkha. We just use the word suffering as a convenient term. Many people don't like the word suffering. It's obvious, isn't it? You don't like the word suffering. It just proves the case that it's something not worthwhile having. But it's there. You can deny God, but you cannot deny suffering. It's there. Something missing in our lives, a lack, right? That's the meaning of life, so to speak. You got to deal with it. You start that. And then number two, there is this condition that falls behind it. It doesn't just pop out like that. there are conditions leading to this feeling of incompleteness, suffering, and so on. So that's the second noble truth. So this meaning of life empowers us, motivates us to study the Dharma, so that we become happier, we look deeper in the meaning, right? Notice what I said, so that we become happier. Right? So there you want happiness, from here to here. And this is the third and fourth truth. The third truth is Nirvana. Nirvana is like the end of the journey, so to speak. Joy, as Sariputta says, we go beyond feelings. And then of course, we got to work out the way, practice it. This is one way of this is the Four Noble Truths, the theoretical sequence. Truth number one is statement of suffering. Truth number two, the conditions for suffering to arise. Truth number three, the ending of suffering, nirvana. Truth number four, the path, the way leading to nirvana. Notice this sequence. This sequence is not exactly a natural sequence, it's more a theoretical sequence. You see suffering, you begin to understand why suffering arises, what, why. Remember the previous week's lesson? And then after that, the solution, nirvana, and then you practice. So you see all this solution. It's like you see a doctor tells you, you're not well, this is the cause, this is how you get well. Here, take the medicine. This is the therapeutic model. I discovered there's another model in the suttas. In fact, more frequent than this model. That's the practical model. Because in practice, you see the truth of suffering, you reflect on the conditions arising, the conditions leading to the arising of the suffering, and then you practice, number four. And then the last one, nirvana, that's the more natural sequence. There is such a sequence, okay? You can call it simply the practical sequence if you like, or the sequence of realization, So when you practice, there's a sequence. But in terms of theory, in terms of teaching, they use this very famous Four Noble Truths sequence. So there are these two sequences. So neither, don't say that the second sequence is wrong at all. It has a different purpose. Yeah? So when we talk about Four Noble Truths, we're also talking about suffering. We're talking about feeling. Feeling, suffering, the kind of, you find it sometimes suffering and Vedanā, feeling, they are synonyms, they overlap. So that's a bit of background to how universal this idea of Vedanā, feeling, and this connected with our study. Now we're on page 68, feeling, love and sex. As you know, one of the most powerful feelings in the worldly society is sexuality. That is what keeps the species going. It's biological. It's hardwired in our brain, so to speak. How is it? You get this nice feeling in your head, so and that nice feeling is there, so to speak, to make sure the species doesn't die. And so it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. It's a bodily feeling. But when I say bodily feeling, the reality is it's the mind that experiences it. But in Buddhism, of course, the Buddha explained all this in some detail. I'll just go through the one relevant passage to show how this understanding sexuality as a feeling is important, and that being male or female is no problem to spiritual progress. Let's look at page 69 from the famous Samyoga Sutta. Samyoga or Samyoga Sutta, A7.48. Okay, page 69, SD 17.3. Now this is the main excerpt here from the Sutta, where the Buddha describes the nature of sexuality, how it arises, and what to do about it. Now notice how amazingly modern this statement sounds. This is the wonderful thing about Pali. The language is simple, repetitive, yes, but the repetition is to make sure we know what we are listening. Okay? So there are two parts. I put in the subheaders, the headings for you: womanliness, manliness. A woman thinks about herself in terms of a womanly faculty. So a woman, up to a certain age, is a child will know she's a girl, a boy. Her womanly ways, her womanly looks, her womanly pride, her womanly desires, her womanly voice, her womanly adornments. She is aroused by this and delights in it. So here you notice a bit of developmental psychology. She becomes more and more aware of herself. Thus aroused, she considers another. And now what does she do? Maybe you got a little two siblings, one boy, one girl, and as they grow up, they begin to notice the differences. Thus aroused, she considers another in terms of a man's faculty. Notice she's looking opposite now. A man's faculty, his manly ways, his manly looks, his manly pride, his manly desires, his manly voice, his manly adornments. She is aroused by this and delights in it. And the Buddha has put this in very simple language. What's the Buddha talking about here? The Buddha is talking about duality, seeing lack and differences in people. This is how craving arises. So what the Buddha said here is given a truth in simple language for the teachers to explain to you the deeper aspects. Right? So this is the wonder of the suttas. So then what happens? You notice a sequence here, one thing leading to another. Thus aroused, she desires external union. Notice, external union. In other words, she looks outside. She's projecting her lack. And she wants to have what she thinks she lacks. And she desires the physical pleasure and mental joy arising on account of such a union. Bhikshus, attached to her womanliness, she enters into union with men. Notice this underlying phrase or sentence here. Attached to her womanliness. So she has this idea, I am a woman, and the other person is a man. So I lack this feeling, unconsciously of course, and so she seeks that union. This is the basic idea of how the worldly mind works. So you can understand now why the Buddha introduced the idea of monasticism, celibacy. The Buddha is training the monks and nuns to rise above this kind of thinking. It's possible. Not easy, but possible under the right conditions. In this way, bhikshus, the woman does not rise above her womanliness. So if you think in this way, that's all you are. You are just a woman. Now, the good news is, the part about the man, the words are all the same. It's just instead of man, instead of woman, you change to man. Alright. But when you read it, it's amazing. Just reflect on the insight that Buddha gives us. Now I'm reading the part on manliness, section 3. A man thinks about himself in terms of his own manly faculty, his manly ways, his manly looks, his manly pride, his manly desires, his manly voice, his manly adornments. He is aroused by this and delights in it. So these are all external things, physical things. He becomes aware of what he has. Thus aroused, he contemplates another in terms of a woman's faculty. So this is opposite, the man looking at someone of the opposite sex. Her womanly ways, her womanly looks, her womanly pride, her womanly desires, her womanly voice, her womanly adornment. He is aroused by this and delights in it. Thus aroused, he desires external union, and he desires the pleasure and joy arising on account of such a union. Bhikshus attached to his manliness, he enters into union with women. In this way, bhikshus, a man does not rise above her womanliness. And then in the closing part, the Buddha tells, in other words, the message is this: we are more than merely physical beings. We are more than merely sexual beings. So if you only think ourselves or sexuality as a sexual beings, then you're stuck there. This is one reason why I think the idea of homosexuality and that kind of labeling of sexuality is not correct. You can't define yourself purely in sexual terms. If we do that, we're stuck with that. Of course, we are male, female, we may have different likes, but the likeness or dislikeness is always based on a duality. I see something missing in myself, I'm attracted to this feeling in another person. There's always some kind of duality. So even in a same-sex relationship, there is one person playing the opposite role. One playing the male role, the other person playing the female role, so to speak. There's always this duality. It's just physically it's not so, but mentally, emotionally it is so. Right? So this statement the Buddha makes still applies psychologically. So it's very interesting in that way. But the message here, what the Buddha is saying is, no matter whether you're a man or a woman, you can rise above that physicality, because sexuality is also matter, classified under matter. You remember in our study on Rupa, you can rise above that limitation, so to speak, and be what you want to be. So you can be a monk, you can be a nun, for example, a monk or a nun. Yes, a monk we call a man who lives so we call a monk, a woman who lives so we call a nun. But in terms of awakening, there's no sexuality. No man, no woman, it's just awakening. That's why we can't define the Buddha in any human terms. Definitely not in sexual terms. It's beyond all the physical definitions. Because it doesn't have those kinds of feelings anymore. So this is a very deep psychology here. You can read on, there's lots of references here. You can read the Sutta itself, the Sanyoga Sutta, A 7.48. It is in SD 8.7. Now when this is not understood, when feeling and sexuality is not understood, you can have a problem, big problem. Buddhist monasticism started with the Buddha, and he has good reasons how to teach the monks. He knew how to use meditation to tell the monks, when you give up the family life, you have all kinds of meditation to do, so you're able to push away distractions towards sex, towards worldly pleasures. But as you know, some religions in the West, especially Catholicism, they've been copying this thing from Buddhists over the centuries, especially monasticism. We don't see this in the Bible. Nowhere in the Bible is there anything about monasticism. It is possible that the Buddhist monastics, Buddhist monasticism influenced the early church. You see this, there were monks in Gandhara, today called Afghanistan. And Alexander, as you know, because of his conquest, he built this giant, huge bridge, between East and West. And he talked with the monks. He was very interested in education and religion. And we know Ashoka also sent monks as far north, as far west as the Asia Minor, Mediterranean area. Of course, we know Buddhism went to China. Imagine if Buddhism can go as far as China, Korea, Japan. And going west is even nearer. It's just that there seems to be some kind of systematic removal of history and text of this spread of Buddhism westwards. But we have some very interesting clues. For example, if you study the Gospel according to St. Luke, you find some kind of Buddhist influence in the story of Christ. But anyway, my point is this: monasticism spread to the West, and then some of these some of the Christians took up monasticism and they were called it as the fathers. So you find that all these practices did influence early Christianity. And in Egypt, there's a group of monastics, they're called therapeutic. Very close to the English word therapeutic. Now, thera means elder monk. Puta is very close to Buddha, like we say Sakyaputta, son of the Buddha. So this is a term is very close, a very close name to the monks. Anyway, the point is this. My point is, in Catholicism you see this monasticism, but tragically you find this terrible hundreds and thousands of cases of child abuse, of all these sexual problems. Because the main reason is because the church somehow cover all these things up. There are many ways of explaining this. One reason is when you believe that God is the highest power, the law of the worlds are not important, people are not important. So that's one reason why many of these things go hidden. Say, oh, it's okay, I can't do anything about you. You deal with God, when you see Him. Another one, the more important reason for us in connection with our studies is feeling. You see, you can copy a system, but if you do not know the old system, you will face some problem, big problems in this case. The monastic system worked with the early Buddhism because there are what I call safety devices, safety training, meditation. For example, the monks meditate on corpses, they meditate on death. There are many kinds of meditation that could keep the monks safe, push away negative thoughts, sexual thoughts and so on. Right? And you have this community of monks doing that. But in the early church, even today, you don't have that kind of advice. Some of them, many of them are quite against meditation. So this is why it's very important to understand the nature of feelings and have the meditations to deal with them. So this is a bit of insight into one of the biggest problems we're facing today from religion. So you notice on page 71, somewhere above section 3, I've underlined the word. They copied the method, but without its safeguards and spirituality. So do read that section. Now let's come back to this topic about feelings again. Feeling and contact. Contact here is a Buddhist technical term meaning the physical senses, the faculties, being stimulated by external stimulus. So you are feeling, you have contact. Now let's look at a passage here from M18, Madhu Pindika Sutta. Very famous passage on defining how we experience things, how we perceive things. Trends or also, depending on the eye and form, eye consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. Meeting of the three, right? Eye, form, eye consciousness. The famous triangle. And there is contact. With contact as condition, there is feeling. With feeling, what one feels, one perceives. Notice, whatever you feel, you not only know it, but you use it as a springboard to recall something in the past. We recognize, you cognize again, you bring back that consciousness of something in the past, then you relate to it in the present. So in a sense, you might say, the worldly person doesn't live in the present. He's always living in the past, so to speak. Whatever he sees in the present, he relates to the past. For example, you meet someone, he looks at you, he doesn't want to talk to you because in the past he knows, he asks you how many room flat you live in, you say, oh, I only 2-room flat, How much your income? Oh, only 2,000 a month, so after they won't talk to you anymore. Because he knows in his mind, this guy's not talking to you, you won't get much out of him or her. So it's all from the past, right? So, I'm using a ridiculous example, but you know what I mean. So, what one feels, one perceives. So you feel, wow, this is great, you have a sense of exuberance. Wow, I'm going to get something from this. So you pursue that. Or if you know, I'm not going to get anything from this, so you shy away. What one perceives, one thinks about. So start thinking, how can I make more money out of this? How can I benefit from this person? Right? How can I use this person? You find these management books, they talk in this way. How to use other people's time. OPT. How to use other people's money. OPM. There's one book that just does this. And the only guy who makes money is the writer of that book. I'm not going to mention this there, the promotion. Okay, what one perceives, one thinks about. And now comes the danger. What thinks about, one mentally proliferates. Proliferates with explosion. thought explosion. What a person mentally proliferates is the source through which perceptions and notions due to mental proliferation impacts one regarding past, future, and present forms cognizable to the eye. To the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, all the senses. What does this mean? This is telling you how worries and problems arise. This is one way of looking at it. So, it starts with seeing something. You look at things the wrong way, desire arises. Like and dislike arises. And once you like something, start thinking, how can I get more of this? How can I have more of this? The collecting, having syndrome. This is called craving. And once you get it, you hold on to it. You don't want to let go. That's called clinging. And then you think about it, and you can't let go of it. That's called addiction. So the idea is that if you understand this process, you're able to break it. If it's a negative process. So this is in a sense, the root of feeling. Then you apply this model to religion. You find it's the same thing in religion. Someone comes up with an idea, saw some bright lights in meditation. Oh, I've seen God. Then he starts a church, or starts a temple, or starts a Buddhist center. He got very successful. He changes his name. Maybe he changes his name to something like Noble Prince or very high something name. And people just love this kind of thing. In Singapore especially, because we want quick answers to success. Not just Singapore, practically any kind of successful society. Right? Like if you go to a kampong kind of situation, people are laughing and say, no, it's not possible. You know, the simpler people sometimes know better truth. So this is where the challenges of industrial life, commercial life can be very trying. That's what happened in India also the last time. There were great riches were coming up, and some people were not getting enough, and we're seeing out their friends make a lot of money. So they get worried. They say, how can I be just as successful as this person? So they were looking for all kinds of answers. So in religion, it's feeling. Someone feels very good about something. Wow, this is great. I have seen God, or better, God has touched me. Don't ask how, because you have not experienced it. I'm the one who's experienced it. So it's a lot of nice talking. That's not how to say it. But then, the thing is, if you're truly a thinking person, you ask the right questions, you find that it's not really that way. But then the problem that you're still not happy is that, how am I going to be happy? But this is where the suttas come in. When you understand the nature of the mind, you find that even if you're alone by yourself, you're happy. And this is what I'm beginning to discover through my Sutta network, through our Sutta network. More and more people out there in the world, there's so many, a growing number of them. They are living in remote areas, Alaska, Chile, Peru, South Africa, and all these remote places, China. They have very little contact with Buddhism. And so when they found the sutta, they're so happy. They said, wow, I'm that lone Buddhist you're talking about. One of them quoted, I have one question on the lone Buddhist where I said, it's okay if you feel left out as a Buddhist, because you're so sure this is the truth, but you find people all around you are materialistic, talking nonsense, superstitious, and you feel like joining them. I mean, if everybody is mad, you're the only sane one, you must not be mad, so you think. But then, you'll be very foolish, right? So they're so happy when they found, wow, there's a website where you have all these very sane statements, not by me. They keep thanking me. I said, no, you should thank the Buddha. It's the Buddha who's teaching us all these things. What we need now is to open this up to more people so that they can read for themselves and understand for themselves. You don't need a guru for this. But you need an open mind, you need attention, commitment, a desire to be happy. And when you're happy yourself, then you can make others happy too. Many preachers are not themselves happy and they say they want to make other people happy. How can you do that? Right, so you see, all these religions, the greatest fear, what is it? You look at page 72, last paragraph, the underlying words. The greatest fear of those who do not understand the true nature of feeling is change in impermanence. They are afraid of death. They fear punishment. They fear hell, for example. Of course, now with the rise of science and clear knowledge, not many people are convinced of hell nowadays anyway, unless they have real serious problems. But still, I find, there was once I was running this meditation course at the Defense Science Organization. They got some volunteers and some of the students, they are specialists in this volunteer thing, because they know you get free money. This defense ministry got a lot of money, so everybody volunteer, you get a lot of money. You just come to do meditation, you get $500 a month. For doing nothing. Yeah, so during break I asked them, they asked me, is that God involved here? I said, no. But then they said they believe in God, so I asked them, of course we're not supposed to talk religion, it's just outside the time. So I said, why do you believe in God? Because they said, I'm so weak, I need a father figure. Yeah, there you are, it is a father figure, it is a parent figure. Fear and so on. So there is fear. Fear is a very important aspect of other religions. There are sayings like the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. What kind of wisdom is that? Fear without wisdom, not very helpful, right? Maybe guilt is a bigger word here, what they use. In a sense, fear. Fear is good, yeah, because you touch hot plate and you say, I'm not going to touch it again. But the Buddhists have an even more powerful term than fear. It's called nibbida, revulsion. Revulsion means you do not want to be cheated again. You know this thing burns, fire burns, you're not going to be scientific and say, I'm going to go and out of 10 times, how many times I can burn, because no more hand left, So, fear is not a good thing to use. In fact, in Buddhism you find the Buddha never uses fear to train people. He always kind of tries his best logically, systematically, lead someone from ignorance to understanding. Because that's the best way to make them think for themselves. Of course, there are occasions when he stretches his hand out and helps someone by, for example, telling this person, I know you're thinking now, and this is what you're thinking, right? And let me tell you, there's a better way. You may do that. But he never says, you better listen to me. If not, you're going to Avicii, He doesn't say that. What he's saying is, if you live a life which is messy, breaking the precepts, hurting people, you will yourself fall into that kind of suffering. No one is going to do it to you. Your own mind will create that kind of suffering. So don't fall into that state. So he's saying, do not create that kind of suffering. That's not fear. It's a friendly warning, like a doctor telling you, be careful, do not take this kind of food, or do not do this kind of thing, because you're going to get sick. It's going to get worse, your sickness will get worse, right? So it's a kind of healing situation. Okay, so that's a bit of psychology of feeling, if you like. We're going to go on to classification of feelings, yeah? Any questions before we go on?
Yes, questions.
Yeah, sure.
On page 69, womanliness and manliness,
Yeah.
at the end of both definition, there's the line, a man does not arise above his manliness, and a woman, I think the same for woman, right?
Correct.
Is there one for woman?
Correct, yes. They are mirror passages.
Does it, does it, in this way, a man or woman does not arise above her, his womanliness. Does it mean that if we define ourselves only by these terms, we will not rise above it? In other words, if we only define this, if we are defined by our sexuality, in simple English, does it mean that if we define ourselves only by our sexuality, we will be nothing more than that? Is that what it means?
Number one, the Buddha is not saying you should deny the fact. I should deny the fact that I'm a man. You deny the fact that you're a woman. No, it's not man, not woman here. The word is manliness, womanliness. So the Buddha is not saying you should deny the fact that you're male or female. Okay? That is a physical fact. Okay? But we must not be limited by that fact. This is what he's trying to say. We should not merely think that that's all we are, right? So there's a danger there when we stereotype sexuality. They did it in China, they did that in India, in most Asian societies at one time. So what is a woman's task in feudal China? Baby producer and pleasure giver. So that's all she is. So she's stuck with that role. That's all she is, womanliness. Manliness, you're the warrior, you're the controller, etc. So the Buddha was against that. So there is a social aspect to this also, in that sense. Equality of the sexes, if you like. Yeah.
Second question is your footnote 35 and 37. He desires external union, and your note was that neither man nor woman is mentioned.
Yeah.
What does that mean, please?
So it's just looking for opposites. Looking for opposites.
So you're saying that one could in fact look for one's same gender?
Yes, not because this person sees manliness or womanliness in the other person. She or he sees what's missing in her. For example, a very tough woman may look for another woman whom she fancies as being, unless she's the soft kind, she thinks this woman is very tough, so she looks up to the strength instead of building the strength within her. In fact, this problem is addressed by one of those famous psychologists, German psychologist called Carl Jung. He talks about anima. So he says that a man must cultivate this womanly quality, this feminine, not female, feminine quality of a man. In other words, compassion, gentleness. There is going to be a balance.
Feminine qualities.
Correct. And a woman should cultivate manly qualities, strength, commitment, things like that. Then you have a balance person. So each of us have to balance ourselves out. Of course, in Buddhism we say wisdom and compassion. Yeah. So we can talk in that way, a balance like yin yang and so on. I mean, even Chinese philosophy has got that idea, yin yang. This thing. Any other questions?
It does not mean it's not a reference to homosexuality.
It's a general statement here, so how people are attracted to it. So it's not always male, female, physically. It is how the mind thinks. It does include homosexuality also, but not only that. Okay. Because why I say this is because some people may have the idea, the Buddha only talk about physical man, physical woman. So it's not addressing this problem of homosexuality or this issue of homosexuality. The psychology, I think, is the same. I'm not coming up any books that talk in this way, but don't be surprised when this day someone will write about this. Very interesting. These specialists can put it to nicer, clearer words.